The hospital lobby was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that made you think the walls were listening. Nurses moved like shadows past the reception desk, wheelchairs creaked on linoleum, and the smell of antiseptic lingered in the air. Ethan Cole stood near the glass entrance, hands deep in the pockets of his charcoal gray coat. His sharp suit looked out of place in the dullness of the waiting area, but everything about him seemed unreachable. His face was calm, stoic, but his eyes told another story. They flickered with something hollow. 6 months ago, he had walked into this very hospital hoping to become a father. Instead, he left with nothing but a death certificate and an unopened baby crib still sealed in his apartment. He wasn't supposed to be here, but some mornings his car just found its way to the hospital parking lot like muscle memory. He would stand, stare, and leave. No purpose, no direction, just pain wrapped in routine. Today, though, something shifted. A small voice broke the silence like a whisper between thunderclaps. "Excuse me, mister." Ethan turned. She couldn't have been older than 7. A little girl with a frayed pink backpack and 2 uneven ponytails stood before him. Her shoes were too big for her feet. In her small hands, she held a folded piece of paper that looked like a crayon drawing. "Are you someone's dad?" she asked, squinting up at him. He blinked. "No, I'm not." The girl hesitated, her hands twisting around the paper. Then she took a shaky breath and asked, "Can you pretend to be my dad, just today?" Ethan stared at her, not sure if he had heard correctly. "What?" "Just today," she repeated. "You don't have to do anything, just walk in with me. The other kids have their dads, and Mommy's too tired to smile." She looked at him with pleading eyes, the kind that had learned disappointment but still believed in miracles. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. This wasn't what he came for. He didn't want to talk to anyone. He didn't want to feel anything. But he did. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he nodded once. The girl's eyes lit up as she gently took his hand. "My name's Leela," she said proudly. "I drew a picture of you." He glanced at the crayon paper as she held it up. It was childlike and messy, 3 stick figures under a rainbow. One labeled Mommy, one me, and the third blank. "I didn't know what your name would be," she said, almost apologetically. "Ethan," he said softly. She smiled. "I like that." They walked past reception, down the hallway that Ethan once knew all too well. Every step felt surreal. Leela chatted about her favorite nurse and how she liked blue crayons the best. Ethan didn't say much, but he listened. And somehow, the sound of her voice chipped away at the cement around his chest. When they reached room 203, Leela paused. She straightened her shoulders and peeked inside. Her mother lay in the hospital bed, pale and thin, her eyes closed. An IV drip pulsed slowly beside her. "Mommy," Leela whispered as she tiptoed in. "Look who came with me today." Maria Rivera opened her eyes slowly. She tried to sit up but winced from the effort. Ethan hovered at the door, unsure whether to step inside. Leela tugged him forward. This is Ethan. He's pretending to be my dad today." Maria's eyes flickered to Ethan's, her face a mix of confusion, alarm, and exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she said weakly. "She does this sometimes, imaginings things." Ethan raised a hand. "It's okay," she asked nicely. "I couldn't say no." Maria gave a faint smile, but her gaze lingered on him cautiously. "I'm Maria. Thank you for being kind." Ethan nodded. "She's got a convincing pitch." Leela skipped over to the bedside and placed her drawing on the tray. "See, I added Daddy this time. Maybe now the nurses will stop asking why we're alone." Maria closed her eyes briefly. "You don't have to do this," she said to Ethan without looking at him. "I know," he replied. There was a pause. Maria looked at her daughter, who had curled up beside her on the bed. Her small fingers brushed against the IV tube without fear, as if this was home now. Maria exhaled, long and slow. She's been strong for too long. Ethan felt something stir inside him. a tightness in his throat, a reminder of what he'd lost, what he never got to hold. "I'll stay for a little while," he said quietly. Maria looked at him, really looked this time, and gave a single grateful nod. Outside the window, the sky was turning gray. A storm was coming. But inside room 203, something small and tender had just begun. Room 203 was dimly lit, the curtains half-drawn as rain tapped softly against the window pane. The hum of machines filled the silence, steady, clinical, and unfeeling. Ethan stood by the corner chair, unsure what to do with his hands. Leela sat on the bed beside her mother, beaming as if she had brought home a prize. Ethan had never been in a room like this before, not since his wife. He had forgotten the strange smell of illness, the way hope clung to the air like mist even when death sat nearby. Maria tried to sit up again, but the effort left her breathless. "Leela, sweetheart," she said, her voice thin, "you can't just bring strange men into my room." Leela looked down, her smile dimming. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't want to be the only kid without a daddy again." Maria's eyes softened. "You're never alone, you have me." "But you're always tired now." Leela's voice cracked as she reached out to touch her mother's frail hand. "And the nurses say I need someone stable for school stuff." Ethan cleared his throat awkwardly, stepping a little closer. "I can leave if this is too much." Maria shook her head. "No, it's just been a long few weeks." He nodded slowly and moved toward the edge of the bed, careful not to overstep. He glanced at the tray table, an untouched cup of Jell-O, a used tissue, and Leela's drawing. The daddy stick figure was now wearing a tie. He didn't remember that detail before. "I don't mean to impose," Ethan added. "She asked me in the lobby. I said yes without thinking." Maria studied him, his clean shoes, his watch, the expensive fabric of his coat. "You don't look like someone who says yes without thinking." Ethan gave a faint smile. "You'd be surprised." Leela brightened. "Can Ethan read to us, Mommy, the bunny book?" Maria hesitated, but seeing the spark in her daughter's face, she nodded. "Okay, just one chapter." Leela jumped off the bed and pulled a worn children's book from the drawer. She handed it to Ethan like it was sacred. Ethan sat down in the chair beside them, opened the book, and began to read. His voice was deep and warm, uncertain at first, but as Leela curled up beside her mother and listened with wide eyes, he found a rhythm. The words came smoother, softer. Maria watched him with quiet intensity. He didn't rush the pages. He paused at the right places. He made the bunny's voice squeaky. And when he said the line, "The bunny wished for someone to stay, just a little longer," Leela let out a sigh and leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. When the chapter ended, Ethan closed the book gently. Leela looked up. "That was perfect." Maria spoke quietly. "You're good with her. Do you have kids?" Ethan stared at the book in his hands. His throat tightened. "No, my wife we were expecting. She died in a car accident 6 months ago." The room went still. "I'm sorry," Maria said, her voice barely audible. Ethan gave a short nod. "I still come here sometimes, don't know why, habit maybe." Maria looked down at her hands. "This hospital has a way of holding pieces of people." A long silence passed between them. Leela, oblivious, began sketching something new with the crayons on the tray, Ethan, holding an umbrella over her and her mother. The clock ticked on. Eventually, Maria asked softly, "Why did you say yes to her?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. "I don't know, maybe because for 1 second, someone looked at me like I was still needed." Maria looked at him like she understood, because she did. Leela looked up. "Can Ethan come back tomorrow, Mommy?" Maria hesitated. Ethan met her gaze, not pushing, not assuming. Finally, Maria replied, "If he wants to." Leela cheered softly and returned to her drawing, humming a little tune under her breath. Ethan stood, unsure whether to say goodbye or thank you. He simply said, "Take care, both of you." Maria nodded. "You too, Ethan." He paused before leaving. You want anything? Coffee, books? Maria smiled faintly. A different life. Ethan didn't smile back, but he nodded once solemnly. I'll bring a coffee just in case. He turned and walked out of room 203, feeling something stir inside him. A voice he hadn't heard in months. Not grief. Not guilt. Something quieter. Something like hope. The next day, Ethan returned, this time with 2 takeaway coffees, a sandwich, and a brown paper bag of crayons he bought on impulse. The nurses were surprised to see him again. One of them smiled and whispered, "She's been waiting since morning." When Ethan walked into room 203, Leela squealed from the foot of the bed. He came back. Mommy, I told you he would. Maria lifted her head weakly and managed a small smile. You weren't wrong. Ethan gave her the coffee first. Black, no sugar, lucky guess. Maria chuckled, lucky and correct. Leela pulled out her school papers, plopping down on the small couch. I told Ms. Greer you were my dad. She was so happy someone came. Ethan froze. Wait, Leela, you told your teacher I'm your dad. Leela looked confused. But you are, just for now, remember. Maria's eyes met his. She looked caught between apologizing and defending her daughter. I didn't ask her to say that, she said softly. But I didn't stop her either. Ethan exhaled. It's okay, I just wasn't expecting a parent-teacher conference. Leela giggled. That's next week. He gave her a look of mock horror, and she burst out laughing. Maria shifted in the bed. You don't have to keep coming, Ethan. I know this isn't your responsibility. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He opened the paper bag and spilled out the new crayons onto Leela's lap. But I want to. Leela's eyes lit up and she whispered, He's like a movie dad. They spent the morning doing math homework. Ethan wasn't good at fractions and Leela corrected him twice, each time with exaggerated pride. Maria watched, silent but smiling. For once, her daughter looked like a child again. But as lunchtime approached, reality returned. Ethan asked gently, Is there anyone else, family, a father? Maria's smile faded. She turned to look out the window. He left when I got sick, said hospitals made him anxious. I said parenthood made me anxious, but I stayed anyway. Ethan said nothing. Some silences didn't need to be filled. Maria continued. My sister's in Ohio. We don't talk anymore. Leela, she doesn't know what it means to have a dad who stays. Ethan looked down at Leela, who was busy coloring a picture of 3 people sitting on a park bench. She had drawn her mother in a sun hat, herself with braids, and him tall, smiling with a book in his hand. Something ached in his chest. At noon, the hospital cafeteria became their dining room. Ethan brought sandwiches and juice boxes. Leela insisted they sit on the floor by the window like a picnic. Most people use chairs, Ethan said, lowering himself onto the tiled floor. Chairs are boring, Leela replied, already munching on a peanut butter sandwich. Maria chuckled from her bed. You're lucky she didn't bring out her tea party set. Ethan smiled. I'd have worn a hat. Leela's face lit up with joy. For a moment there was peace. Real peace, not forced, not borrowed, just 3 souls suspended in borrowed time. Then Maria's breath caught suddenly. She clutched her chest, her face twisting in pain. Mommy, Leela's sandwich dropped to the floor. Ethan was up in seconds, pressing the call button and guiding Leela away. It's okay, help's coming. Maria tried to speak, but her voice was tight, strained. The machines began to beep erratically. Nurses rushed in. One ushered Leela out of the room. Ethan followed, his arms around her, shielding her from the chaos inside. They sat in the hallway for what felt like hours. Leela curled into his side. I don't want her to die, she whispered. Ethan squeezed her closer. She's strong, she's fighting. Leela looked up at him with trembling lips. If she goes, do I disappear too? No, Ethan said firmly. You don't disappear. Tears welled in her eyes. Then can I stay with you? He paused. I mean, just if Mommy, if she, you don't have to say yes. Ethan looked down at this small girl, who had already lived through more abandonment than most adults. I don't have the right answer right now, he admitted. But you didn't run, she said. All the other people run. He blinked back something hot in his own eyes. I'm still here, or I. Leela nodded, burying her face in his coat. A few minutes later, the doctor came out. Maria was stable again, but fatigued, he said, and weakening. Ethan looked toward the door of room 203. The girl beside him clung tighter. He wasn't her father. He wasn't even her friend. But he was something. And maybe, for now, that was enough. The next morning, Ethan returned with a small bouquet of daisies. They were the only flowers that seemed both cheerful and gentle enough for a hospital room. He stepped inside room 203 to find Maria propped up by pillows, her skin paler, her eyes dimmer. But she smiled when she saw him. You're becoming a habit, she said weakly. He handed her the flowers, daisies for the bravest woman I know. Maria blinked slowly. They remind me of home. We had a garden once before everything. Leela was curled up by her mother's feet, drawing in her notebook. She looked up and beamed. I drew you again, she said, holding up a page. It was another sketch of the three of them, this time standing on a grassy hill under a bright yellow sun. Ethan knelt down. Where are we in this picture? That's you in the middle. You're always in the middle, she said matter-of-factly. Why? Because that's where daddies go. They hold the hands on both sides. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Maria did. Leela, sweetheart, he's not your. I know, Leela interrupted gently, but today he is. Ethan's chest tightened. Maria closed her eyes. I didn't think I'd feel this tired today. He reached for the water cup and held the straw to her lips. You should rest. We'll stay quiet. But before she drifted off, she whispered, Ethan, can I ask you something? Anything. If I don't wake up one of these mornings, she hesitated, will you stay with her, just until someone from social services comes? He swallowed. You're not going anywhere yet. I know, she said softly, but if I do. Ethan nodded. I won't let her be alone. Maria exhaled. Like that promise gave her body permission to relax. Leela kept drawing, her tiny hands covered in crayon smudges. Ethan watched her for a while, feeling the weight of what he'd just agreed to settle over his shoulders. Later that afternoon, the hospital chaplain stopped by. Maria had asked for him earlier in the week. Ethan stepped out to give them privacy, but Leela followed him to the hallway. Is Mommy going to heaven? She asked without looking at him. Ethan crouched beside her. She's not leaving yet. But if she does, will I still be me? He furrowed his brow. What do you mean? She looked up. Everyone says I'm only strong because of her. If she dies, do I still get to be strong? Ethan gently took her hand. You're strong because of who you are, not just because of who she is, but she gave you a big piece of her heart. That part will never leave. Leela nodded slowly. Will you be there if I cry? Yes, he said, without hesitation. A nurse came by then, Mr. Grant. It still felt strange, hearing his name with such intimacy. Ethan stood up. Yes. She wants to speak with you, alone. Inside the room, Maria looked smaller, frailer. The chaplain had left, and her Bible sat closed on the tray beside her. I need to say something, she said. Ethan pulled the chair closer. I'm here. I don't know what your story is, she said, but you're carrying something heavy too. I can see it in your eyes. He looked away. Maria reached out, her fingers cold but steady. Whatever it is, maybe this is how you heal, by showing up for someone else. He couldn't speak. I've watched you these few days. You're kind, you listen. You don't pretend to have answers. That's the kind of man I prayed would walk into my daughter's life. Ethan blinked back tears. I'm no one's savior. Neither was I, she said with a faint smile. But we don't have to be perfect to be enough. He nodded slowly. Maria gripped his hand. Just don't disappear, not like the others. I won't. She relaxed against the pillow. Then I can rest. That night, Leela stayed at the hospital, curled beside her mom. Ethan sat in the hallway, watching the nurses change shifts, the fluorescent lights flickering in that familiar cold white glow. He hadn't planned this. He never expected to become someone to a child again. But somehow, against the current of his carefully controlled life, here he was playing dad but feeling something real. As he stared at the closed hospital door, a quiet promise rose in his chest. He wasn't just pretending anymore. The morning sunlight crept slowly into the hospital room, warm and golden, in stark contrast to the heaviness that filled the air. Ethan entered room 203 carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate, one for Leela and one for himself. But he stopped in the doorway. The room was quiet, too quiet. Maria lay motionless in the bed, her hands folded neatly over her chest, the monitors silent. A nurse stood nearby with red eyes and soft footsteps. Leela sat on the windowsill, knees pulled to her chest, clutching her notebook. She didn't look up. Ethan felt the cup fall from his hand. It hit the floor and rolled, spilling chocolate in a quiet, meaningless puddle. I'm sorry, the nurse whispered. She passed early this morning, peacefully. He stepped forward slowly, each breath shallow. Maria's face looked calm, almost like she was sleeping, but the stillness was final, unmistakable. Ethan lowered himself beside the bed, not caring who was watching. He took her hand, cold and still, and pressed it to his forehead. Thank you, he murmured, for trusting me. Behind him, Leela spoke, her voice small and steady. I heard the beeping stop in the night. I knew it was time. Ethan turned. Did anyone come check on you? I didn't want them to. I wanted to be the last person she saw. Ethan stood and walked toward her. I'm so sorry, Leela. She leaned into him, pressing her head to his chest. I don't want to go with strangers. You won't, he said immediately. I won't let them take you away alone. But you're not my real dad. I know, he said softly, but I'm still here. Later that afternoon, paperwork began. Maria had no next of kin listed. No emergency contact except the local shelter. Social services was called. Ethan sat in a sterile white office, while a woman with a clipboard asked him questions. You're not legally connected to the child, Mr. Grant. I know. Are you related? No. Then why were you there? She asked me to stay. The woman blinked. We appreciate your support, but unless there's documentation of a temporary guardianship. I'm not leaving her, not today. Leela sat outside in a chair, clutching her backpack and notebook. Her feet didn't touch the floor. She's traumatized, Ethan added. She just lost the only person she had. We understand that, but until we can find a suitable foster placement, she'll have to come with us. I'll foster her, he said. The woman paused. You'd be willing to initiate that process? Yes. There's paperwork, background checks, home inspections. It's not overnight. Then start it. I'll do what it takes. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Ethan's voice broke. Because she asked me to pretend to be her dad, and I said yes. I didn't realize how real it would become, but now it is. There was a long silence. We'll place her in emergency care tonight, and I'll fast-track your application. No, he said. She stays with me tonight. That's against protocol. Then change it. By evening, they let him sign a temporary caretaker form, just until the judge reviewed the case in family court. He took Leela home. She stood at the edge of his penthouse living room, eyes wide. It felt too big, too polished, too cold. "This doesn't feel like a place where kids live," she whispered. "I never thought kids would," Ethan admitted. She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and pressed her hand to the glass. The city lights glittered below. "I miss Mommy already." Ethan knelt beside her. "Me too." She turned, tears brimming but refusing to fall. "What happens next?" "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm not going anywhere." Leela studied his face. "You said you'd only be my dad for one day." He nodded. "But can tomorrow count too?" He pulled her gently into a hug. "Every tomorrow you want." That night, Ethan watched her fall asleep curled up on his oversized couch, hugging her notebook like a teddy bear. He walked into his study and opened his laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank form titled Foster Application, Emergency Custody Request. He had spent years running from attachments, from grief, from the pain of trying to care only to lose again. But Maria had given him one last chance to be someone better. And Leela had asked him, quietly, boldly, innocently, to keep showing up. He began to type. Morning in Ethan's penthouse was different now, no longer silent, no longer empty. There was the sound of cereal crunching, a soft hum of cartoons in the background, the occasional thud of small feet running across the living room rug. Leela was in the kitchen, standing on a chair in one of Ethan's oversized shirts, sleeves dangling past her fingers. Her hair was a tangled mess, and her smile showed a missing front tooth. "I made you breakfast," she announced. Ethan blinked at the plate. 2 burnt pieces of toast, a squirt of ketchup, and something resembling scrambled eggs, gray and gooey. "It's creative," he managed. "I used garlic powder." "You sure did." Leela beamed, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded paper. "I made this last night. I forgot to give it to you." He opened it slowly. It was a drawing, crayon on construction paper. In it, 2 stick figures stood side by side, one tall, wearing a tie, and one small, with big eyes and pigtails. Above them, in crooked letters, "Me and my dad for today, or longer." Ethan stared at it for a long time. The drawing trembled slightly in his hands. "Can I put it on the fridge?" she asked. He walked over, found a magnet, and placed it right at the center of the stainless steel door. "It's the best thing on there," he said. Leela smiled. Later that day, Ethan brought her to his office, half by necessity, half because he wasn't ready to let her out of his sight. His assistant, Kendra, blinked twice when she saw the little girl walk in beside him, holding his hand. Mr. Grant." "This is Leela," Ethan said. "She's going to hang out here for a while." Leela gave a shy wave. "Hi, I'm not contagious." Kendra snorted. Ethan cleared a corner of his office, pushed aside design mock-ups and client folders, and set up a makeshift fort with a blanket and 2 chairs. Inside, Leela opened her notebook again and started to write. "Whatcha working on?" Ethan asked during a break. "My dad for the day list, things we haven't done yet." He smiled. "Like what?" She flipped to a page. "Go to the zoo, eat pancakes for dinner, play Uno, have a snowball fight even if there's no snow." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "We'll do all of it." "You promise?" "I don't make promises lightly, Leela, but to you, I mean every word." She tilted her head. "You talk like one of those people on TV." He laughed. "I probably am one of those people." That evening, Ethan took Leela out for dinner, at a small diner instead of the 5-star restaurants he usually frequented. They ordered pancakes with whipped cream and chocolate syrup. Leela kept glancing at other tables, watching. "Are you looking for something?" he asked. She shrugged, "Just checking, in case the people from foster care come." Ethan grew quiet. "No one's coming tonight, you're safe with me." "But what if someone says you're not my dad and makes me leave?" He reached across the table and took her hand gently. "Let me worry about that." She nodded slowly, then added, "I'm glad I picked you." He looked up. That day in the lobby, I almost asked the man with the loud tie, but he looked mean. "You looked like someone who lost something too." He blinked. I had. That night back in the penthouse, Leela asked if she could sleep in the guest room again. Ethan tucked her in and began to walk out when her voice stopped him. "Can you sit for a minute?" He nodded, sitting at the edge of the bed. "I don't remember what my real dad looked like, just shadows, but I think maybe he smiled like you do." Ethan looked away, trying to keep his breath even. "Do you think Mommy knows I'm okay?" "I do," he said. "I think she's watching." Leela closed her eyes, the blanket pulled up to her chin. "Good, then I can sleep now." He stayed a moment longer, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead, before leaving the door cracked open behind him. Back in his study, Ethan opened his laptop again. The foster application status was still under review. He refreshed the page. Still no update. His phone buzzed, an email from the social worker. Subject, custody hearing date confirmed next week. Note, please begin preparing character references and home evaluation. Ethan exhaled. The road was just beginning. But the drawing on his fridge said everything he needed to remember. "Me and my dad for today, or longer." He smiled softly to himself. "For longer, Leela, much longer." The courtroom smelled of varnish and nerves. Ethan stood tall in his tailored suit, but his palms were damp. The place wasn't intimidating because of its walls or gavel, but because what was at stake sat in the hallway outside, swinging her legs, clutching a backpack full of crayon drawings. Leela. The child who had slipped into his life by accident, or maybe fate, he wasn't sure anymore. The social worker approached, flipping through a clipboard. "Mr. Grant, are you certain about this?" "Yes." "You're a single man, no parenting experience. This is unconventional." Ethan nodded. So was Leela's request. "Are you doing this out of guilt or loneliness?" He met her eyes. "I'm doing this because I can give her what she's never had, a home where someone chooses her." That silenced the woman. A few minutes later, the judge entered. Gray-haired, stern, no-nonsense. The type who'd seen every trick in the book. "Mr. Grant, state your case." Ethan stood, clearing his throat. "I'm not here because I plan to be a father. I never thought I'd be one. But a little girl walked into my life and asked me for one day. And in one day, she showed me more courage than I've seen in boardrooms, in billion-dollar deals, or in any adult I know." He paused, then continued, voice softening. "She doesn't want pity, she wants presence. She doesn't need saving, she just needs someone who won't leave." The judge leaned back, studying him. "You do realize this isn't a casual arrangement?" "I know. If I grant this custody request, it becomes your life." Ethan looked toward the hallway, where Leela peeked in through the door's window, her nose pressed against the glass. "It already is." After the hearing, Ethan knelt beside her in the hallway. "You were so brave," she whispered. "I think you were braver." "Did the judge say yes?" He paused. "Not yet, but we made a strong case." She unzipped her backpack and handed him something. Another drawing. This one had a courtroom, stick figures of him and her, and above them, "Please let me stay." His throat tightened. "I think your artwork helped more than my speech." She leaned on his shoulder. "Judges like colors." Later that week, the penthouse buzzed with preparation. Ethan's assistant Kendra arrived with grocery bags, a new pink backpack, and a beginner's parenting book. "Chapter 1, How to Braid Hair," she read out loud, smirking. Ethan groaned. "I can build a tech empire, but this is where I fail." "Leela's got you wrapped," she said, watching him pour cereal into a princess bowl with laser focus. She has me centered, he replied. Leela danced around with a dish towel cape. I'm super daughter. You're super bossy, Ethan teased. But you still listen to me, she countered. He laughed, admitting defeat. One night, Ethan came home late after a meeting and found a surprise. The fridge was covered, entirely covered in Leela's artwork. Each page had something new. The two of them on a swing. Him cooking eggs with burnt toast. A mansion with hearts above it. He pulled one down to read it. This house was sad, now it's not. Leela. He didn't realize he was crying until she appeared behind him, barefoot, sleepy-eyed. Do you like it? I love it. I thought your fridge needed color. He picked her up gently. So does my life. A few days later, Ethan received a call. It was the judge's clerk. The decision has been made. You may come to pick up the papers tomorrow. Is it a yes? There was a pause, then a simple answer. You've been granted temporary custody pending 6-month review. Ethan whispered his thanks and hung up. In the next room, Leela was making a paper crown out of cereal boxes. He walked over, knelt beside her, and said, "Hey." She looked up, blinking. "Hey. I have news." She froze. "You're staying." Her face didn't move at first. Then, like the sunrise breaking through clouds, her smile emerged. "Like for real. For real." She launched into his arms so fast she nearly knocked him over. He hugged her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head. "I knew it," she whispered. "You look like a dad now." He chuckled. "You made me one." That night, Ethan tucked her into bed again, but this time he sat beside her for a long time. "Leela, you changed everything." She reached for his hand. "So did you." The morning light streamed through the penthouse windows, washing everything in gold. Leela sat cross-legged on the marble floor, feeding cereal to her stuffed unicorn. "You have to chew with your mouth closed, Miss Sparkles. That's what Daddy says." Across the room, Ethan stood by the kitchen island pouring coffee, but he froze at the word, "Daddy." She said it casually, without flinching. And it landed in his chest, like the most beautiful punch he'd ever received. He took a slow breath, steadying the wave of emotion. He wasn't just pretending anymore. He was becoming. Later that day, the two of them walked into an upscale clothing boutique. Ethan had a meeting with the mayor about a tech grant, and Leela insisted he needed friendlier shoes. "These look like they eat feelings," she said, pointing at his sleek black leather Oxfords. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "They cost more than your entire school tuition." "Then they should smile more." The sales assistant laughed so hard, she nearly dropped a stack of ties. They left with a pair of navy sneakers and a sparkly headband Leela claimed made her look like a CEO's daughter. "You are one," Ethan said. She beamed. That afternoon, Kendra arrived with an envelope in hand. The judge's final paperwork, official, signed and sealed. Ethan took the envelope and opened it slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. Inside was a certificate of temporary guardianship. He stared at his name next to hers. Ethan Cole Grant, legal guardian of Leela Rose Bennett. She didn't carry his blood, but now she carried his name. He sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Kendra placed a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "I think I just became someone new." That night they celebrated. They made burnt cookies, danced to jazz, Leela called it, grown-up baby music, and watched a Pixar movie while building a fort out of pillows and throw blankets that had probably cost more than most people's cars. "Can I sleep in here tonight?" Leela asked as she yawned. "You can sleep anywhere in this house," Ethan replied. "Even in your room." He blinked, maybe not that anywhere. She giggled, fine, but I'm putting my unicorn next to your bed so you don't forget I'm here now. I'd never forget. But not everything was easy. 2 days later, Ethan took Leela to a therapist, someone experienced with foster trauma. During their first session, Leela stayed quiet, arms crossed, eyes wary. Ethan sat beside her, holding a juice box. "Mr. Grant," the therapist asked gently, "what's the hardest part of this transition for you?" He thought for a second, "That I can't erase what came before." Leela shifted slightly. "I can give her love," he continued, "but I can't undo what people before me didn't give." The therapist nodded, but showing up is already rewriting the story. Leela looked at him then, really looked. And for the first time in that room, she smiled. That weekend, they attended a school fair. It was full of loud rides, fried food, and chaotic face painting. Ethan wore sunglasses and a hat, hoping not to be recognized. Tech moguls didn't usually show up to dunk tanks or ring toss booths. But Leela, she thrived. She tugged him from one stall to another, collecting cotton candy, teddy bears, and stickers like badges of honor. At one point, a classmate ran up. "Who's that?" the girl asked. Leela grinned. "That's my dad." The words were loud, clear. And Ethan, standing nearby with a lemonade in each hand, pretended he wasn't blinking too hard. That night, Leela drew something new. Another picture for the fridge. It was of a house with a giant heart on the roof. Inside were two stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands. Above them, in bright, crayon-bold letters, she'd written, "Home is a person." Ethan stared at it long after she went to bed. She had no idea she was healing him, too. He knocked gently on her door and peeked in. She was already asleep, her tiny arm wrapped around Miss Sparkles. He tiptoed in, tucked the blanket under her chin, and whispered, "You made this place alive, Leela." As he turned to leave, her voice, muffled and dreamy, stopped him. "Daddy." He turned, "Yes. Thanks for pretending." He smiled softly. "I'm not pretending anymore." She smiled in her sleep. Neither of them knew how the next chapters of their story would go. But for tonight, they had something they hadn't had in a long time. Peace. It had been 3 months since Ethan Grant's penthouse became a home. 3 months of lunchbox notes, bedtime stories, spilled juice on expensive rugs, and a silence that was no longer cold, but warm. And Leela. She bloomed like a flower kissed by sun for the first time. Her laughter had returned. She called Ethan Dad without hesitation. She even corrected people when they said guardian. "Nope," she'd say proudly. "He's my real one now." Ethan had learned how to braid hair, how to fix invisible boo-boos, and how to listen. Not like a CEO, but like someone who actually stayed. But peace has a fragile way of being tested. One Friday morning, as Leela was coloring at the dining table and Ethan was reviewing contracts, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost declined, until instinct made him answer. "Ethan Grant," he said flatly. A deep breath came from the other end. Then a voice he didn't recognize said, "I'm Leela's mother." He froze. The world seemed to shrink around him. "I know I don't deserve to speak to you," the woman continued. "Or to her, but I heard you took her in. I didn't think anyone would." Ethan's voice was steel. "What do you want?" "I'm in rehab," she said softly. "I'm clean now. I just wanted to see her. Once, please." Ethan gripped the edge of the table. She was the one who left Leela at a shelter. She was the one who ignored the court summons. She was the one who gave up. He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no either. That night he didn't sleep. He sat in the hallway, outside Leela's room, staring at the door. If her mother returned, even just to visit, what would that mean for Leela? He didn't fear losing custody. Legally, he was secure. But emotionally, that was different. He remembered what Leela said the first day. I'm just someone people leave. What if her mother showed up only to vanish again? Could Leela survive another goodbye? He called Kendra the next morning. You okay? She asked. No. He told her everything. She was silent for a while, then. You're not afraid of losing her. You're afraid she'll lose herself again. He exhaled slowly. Exactly. Kendra spoke softly. Then be honest with her. Trust her heart more than you fear it breaking. That afternoon, he sat across from Leela at their kitchen table. She was doodling a rocket ship with little stick figures floating inside. She'd labeled them me and Daddy. Can we talk? He asked. Uh-oh, am I in trouble? No, Munchkin, nothing like that. He told her about the call, about her mom's, about the visit, and then he did something harder. He gave her the choice. If you want to see her, we can. I'll be there the whole time, but you don't have to. Leela's hand stopped moving. She looked down at her paper, and for a long time she didn't speak. Then, will she leave again? I don't know, Ethan said truthfully, but I won't. She nodded just once. Okay, I want to see her. They met in a public garden near the rehab center, a quiet place filled with rows, bushes, and benches. Leela wore a yellow dress and held Miss Sparkles tightly. Ethan stood behind her like a guardian made of stone. Then the woman appeared. Gaunt, pale, nervous. She knelt down, tears in her eyes. Hi, baby, she whispered. Leela stared at her. Then softly, You forgot me. The woman choked on a sob. I know I was sick, but I never stopped thinking of you. Leela tilted her head. Why didn't you come get me sooner? The woman looked at Ethan, then at the ground. Because he didn't forget you, she said, and I couldn't pretend to be better than someone who actually stayed. Leela was quiet, then she did something that surprised them all. She walked forward and hugged her mother. Just once. A short, trembling hug. Then she stepped back, grabbed Ethan's hand, and said, This is my dad now. And just like that, the woman nodded, eyes full of acceptance and tears. Take care of her, she whispered to Ethan. He squeezed Leela's hand. I already do. On the ride home, Leela stared out the window. Are you okay? Ethan asked. She nodded. I just needed to see. See what? That she's not my home anymore. Ethan didn't say a word. He just reached over, placed his hand over hers, and held on. That night, they sat on the couch with a new book. Leela curled beside him, head on his chest. Hey, Dad, she murmured. Yeah. I'm glad you said yes that day in the lobby. He smiled, me too. She looked up at him. But even if you hadn't, I think you were always meant to be mine. And in the quiet glow of their living room, under the warm hum of ordinary life, Ethan realized. This wasn't just about rescue. It was about belonging. As sunlight streamed through the wide hospital windows, Olivia sat quietly by Mia's bedside. Her daughter's fever had broken, and the IV had been removed that morning. Doctors now confirmed it had been a severe infection, but Mia's resilience and quick treatment saved her. A knock on the door broke the silence. Derek. Dressed in casual jeans and a soft sweater, he stepped inside holding a paper bag and 2 coffees. Mia said you liked blueberry muffins, he said, setting the bag on the table with a shy smile. Olivia blinked back tears. She remembered that. She remembers everything, he replied, including what you've done for her. Mia stirred and opened her eyes. "Daddy," she whispered sleepily. Olivia froze, but Derek stepped forward without hesitation. "I'm here, princess." He took her tiny hand gently, brushing her hair back. In that moment, the word daddy didn't feel like pretend anymore. It felt real. After Mia drifted back to sleep, Olivia and Derek stepped into the hallway. There was a long pause. "I never thought I'd say this," Derek began, "but pretending to be her dad, it gave me something I never knew I needed." Olivia looked away. "She's never had anyone like you. I can't ask for more." "You don't have to," he said softly. "I'm asking. Let's stop pretending. If you'll let me, I want to be part of both your lives for real." Her eyes filled. "Are you sure you barely know?" "I know you protect your daughter with everything you have. I know you're kind and smart and stronger than anyone I've ever met. That's enough." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Then yes." They hugged, tentative at first, then fierce. Mia woke up to see them through the glass, holding each other. "Mommy," she whispered, "did we get our wish?" Later that week, they left the hospital together, hand in hand, a real family. No more pretending. And when Mia proudly introduced Derek to her kindergarten class a month later, she said just one sentence. "This is my daddy. He showed up when we needed him most." And no one ever questioned it again.